Hi, and welcome back to the Adored Woman podcast. It's Naomie here. I want to start today's episode with a story. So there's a woman. She's dating. She's got a date with a guy she's been speaking to online. They've chatted on the phone. They seem to connect. His pictures are nice. Seems like a nice guy, and she thinks this could be a good one. So she gets herself ready. She does her hair, puts on her lucky underpants. Her nails are freshly done, and she looks in the mirror and she feels good. Like really good. Maybe it's going to happen for her at last. She heads to the cafe where they're going to meet, and he's already there when she arrives. He pulls her out a chair, gets her a drink, and they start chatting. And then about 5 minutes in, he stands up, looks at her and says, "I've got to be honest, I'm not really feeling the chemistry, and there's probably no point in us wasting our time. I'm sure you've got better things to do as well." And he leaves. And she sits there, stunned, devastated. So she does what any of us would do. She speaks to the closest woman to her in her life and tells her what happened. And that woman says, "Well, honestly, I've always known, and deep down you've always known too, that you're not really the kind of girl that gets a great guy. You're not that attractive. You don't have much to say for yourself. I don't know why you're so surprised. You're always going to be single. Everyone knows that." Now, I want to ask you something. Who would have a friend like that? Who would allow someone, anyone, to speak to them that way? And here's the thing. The closest woman to that lady was herself. That voice, it was her own. And that is what I want to talk about today. How we speak to ourselves. How unkind we are to ourselves. How we say things to ourselves in the privacy of our own mind that we would never, ever tolerate from another human being. Because to me, what that woman did to herself in that moment is a form of self-harm. It's psychological and emotional self-harm. It doesn't leave a mark you can see. Nobody notices. Nobody rushes over and says, "What are you doing to yourself? Stop, you need help." But if that same woman had gone home and hurt herself physically, the people who loved her would have seen it immediately. They'd have seen those wounds and they'd have been alarmed and they'd have taken her to get help. So why do we not treat the inner wounds the same way? Why do we tolerate the level of self-harm that we give to ourselves internally? We are the person we spend more time with than anyone else on this planet, more than our best friends, more than our partners, more than our children, our parents. The voice inside our own head is the one we hear from the moment we wake up to the moment we fall asleep. And for so many women, that voice is not kind. Now, maybe you're thinking, what does this have to do with attracting a relationship? Everything. Absolutely everything. Because here's what I know to be true. The way you treat yourself sets the standard for how others treat you. Not in some abstract spiritual way, but in a very real, very practical way. When you walk into a room having spent the last hour quietly telling yourself you're not enough, that you're too much, that you're not pretty enough or slim enough or interesting enough or young enough, that energy is felt. You can't hide it behind a great outfit or a bright smile because it seeps through. And the men you attract will reflect it back to you. Let me make that real for you because I don't want it just to sound like a vague concept. So think about the woman who is constantly apologizing for herself. She shrinks and pulls back in conversations instead of speaking up. She over-explains. She says yes when she means no because she doesn't want to be too much. She laughs off comments that actually hurt her. That's exactly what I used to do. She stays an hour longer than she wants to at a party because she doesn't want to seem difficult for the people she's with. And then she wonders why the men she dates don't seem to take her seriously, why they cancel plans, and she says it's fine when it isn't, why she ends up in situationships with men who enjoy her company but never quite commit. The man isn't the problem, he's the mirror. Or think about the woman who's decided, consciously or not, that she isn't really worth pursuing properly. So when a man comes along who is consistent, who calls when he says he will, who is genuinely interested and making a real effort, she finds him boring, like too much, too keen, suffocating. She's drawn instead to the one who keeps her guessing, who will be hot and cold with her, who she has to work really hard for. Because that push and pull feels like passion, feels like spark, it feels like love. But what it actually feels like is familiar home, because it mirrors exactly how she feels about herself. Uncertain, inconsistent, sometimes worth it, sometimes not. Now, none of these women are weak. None of them are foolish. They're simply living out the relationship they have with themselves in their love lives where it shows up most clearly. But here's what I also know is it can change. When the inner voice shifts, even slightly, the outer world responds. And I know that love yourself can sound like the most unhelpful advice in the world when you're in the thick of feeling really bad about yourself and life. So let me make it really practical for you, because yes, getting your nails done is lovely. A massage, a long bath, or a beautiful meal, all of that is part of taking care of yourself. And I'm absolutely not dismissing it. But for me, real self-love goes deeper than that. It goes into the places we don't want anyone to see. And here's what I mean. We all have parts of ourselves and aspects of ourselves that we're not proud of. The times when we snapped at our children when we've been exhausted and overwhelmed, or the moments we've been critical or sharp with a partner, the days we've been jealous or petty or said something we wish we could just take back. So we all have these aspects of us, every single one of us. And what do we usually do with these parts of us? We hide them. We feel ashamed of them. We hope nobody notices. We criticize ourselves for having them in the first place. But here's what I want you to try instead, is to love those aspects of you. And I mean it. The parts of you that are messy, imperfect, like you not in your finest hour. Just love them, the needy part of you. And it's not because you're trying for them to be perfect, or not because the behavior was okay, but because these aspects are part of you and you deserve love in your entirety, not just the polished, presentable bits. And it really starts with you. And you can do this however feels right for you. Some women find it helpful to literally imagine wrapping that part of themselves up in warmth, like a ball of golden light, or like a warm blanket, or warm liquid love just pouring over it. And some people find it easier just to stop. And this is, I used to do this, just put a hand on your heart or wherever you're feeling that kind of tension and pain, and just say, I feel you. It's okay. You're safe. So you find what works for you. But what I'd really say is stop leaving those parts of yourself out in the cold, because here is the real magic in this. When you can love even the darkest, most difficult, the ugliest parts of yourself, the neediness, the jealousy, the spikiness, you signal to the world that you can love the difficult parts of someone else too. And I'm not talking about severe toxicity, guys who are narcissistic. I'm not talking about that. But actually a great man, a really good man who wants to love you. And this kind of guy doesn't want a woman who's pretending to be perfect. He wants a woman who's real, who's warm, who he knows will accept him when he's not having his best day or when he's struggling, because she's already made peace with her own struggles. So I want to give you these two very simple things you can start doing right now, today. They don't cost anything. They don't take long, but done consistently, they genuinely shift how you feel about yourself. So if you want to transform this, try that. Try that process that I spoke to you before. When you notice that inner voice turning cruel, when the shame creeps in about something you said or did or felt, don't fight it. Don't double down on the criticism. Just pour some love on it. Acknowledge it. Just remind yourself you're safe and loved. Look at yourself in the mirror and say it. Because it's just a habit. Those nasty voices are just habits, and we want to change up these habits. Also, something that I do suggest people do and that I did is acknowledge yourself for something, the things you're doing right. And they don't have to be huge achievements, but they could just be a few things that you did well. Anything. You remembered a friend's birthday. You cooked yourself a healthy meal. You showed up for your kids even when you were tired. You got through a difficult conversation. We are so quick to acknowledge other people. We'll tell our friends that they're incredible, that they handled something brilliantly, that we don't know how they do it. You're amazing. And then we go home and we beat ourselves up and we give ourselves nothing. And this really has to change, because the woman who wants to be adored needs to learn how to adore herself first. The woman who wants to be seen needs to learn how to see herself, and not arrogantly, not with the same performance of confidence, but just quietly and warmly. I did good today. And where I wasn't perfect, I love myself anyway. And here's what I really want to give you and for you to take away from this conversation is the relationship you have with yourself is the relationship that sets the template for every other relationship in your life. It's not separate from your love life. It is your love life in its earliest and most essential form. This is part of your love story, is how you love yourself. And when you're genuinely kind to yourself, something shifts. You're not tolerating the things that don't feel good anymore, not because you've read a rule about standards somewhere, but because they just don't feel right anymore. And you will naturally start getting turned off bad behavior in others, and you'll naturally start moving towards people and situations that feel good and nourishing, because that's what's become familiar. Inside the atmosphere of you, it's become familiar to feel good about yourself. So those are the situations you'll feel drawn to, and you'll become, as I love to say, a walking green flag for a great relationship with an emotionally mature man and great friendships. And it's not because you've perfected yourself, but because you've accepted yourself, and that is magnetic. The woman who walked out of that date and spoke to herself with such cruelty, she deserved so much better, not just from that man, but from herself. And so do you. And if this whole message has landed for you today, I'd love to hear from you. Come and find me, tell me what came up. And the messages you leave on this podcast really mean the world to me, and I will read and respond to all of them. You can get my free training, The 9 Aspects of the Adored Woman. I will leave the link below. And until next time, if you could see yourself the way I see you, then you would believe in yourself and love yourself and be really kind to yourself, really kind. And I will see you in the next episode.